Now, soon after the attempted assassination, King Xerxes honored Haman's son of Hammedatha, the Agagite, elevating him and giving him a seat of honor higher than that of all the other nobles. All the royal officials at the king's gate knelt down and paid honor to Haman, for the king had commanded this concerning him. But of course Mordecai, despite his supposed attempt to keep himself out of the public eye, would not kneel down or pay him honor. According to verses 3 and 4, the officials at the gate continually asked Mordecai why he refused to kneel down before Haman. For a while Mordecai refused to answer, but eventually his arrogance got the better of him and he let the cat out of the bag, telling them he was a Jew. Now, why being a Jew means you can't show proper respect to a superior, as does everyone else, is never explained in the story. Now, when Haman found out about this, he was enraged. Now, why was a foreigner who was being allowed to live in his country being so disrespectful and rude? Haman may also have known of the Jewish sacking, or I should say Israelite, they weren't Jews yet, the Israelite sacking of Egypt, the genocide of the Canaanites, as well as various other races, tribes, and nations. If Haman had known anything about the Israelite or Jewish laws and their religion, he had a good reason to fear them, since their laws called for the execution of any who refused to worship their God, or even in some places who refused to surrender to enslavement. There are places in the Bible where it says that if Israel makes war with another nation and that nation refuses to willingly become their slaves, then it's okay to wipe them out. So obviously such a race or religion would surely cause others to fear, distrust, or hate them, and so Haman did. And it tells us that Haman looked for a way to destroy all Mordecai's people, the Jews, throughout the whole kingdom of Xerxes. Interesting point to bring up about this: since the Jews had allegedly wiped out every living Canaanite, Haman was actually exacting just retribution according to Jewish law, which says all sins must be paid by the heads of the sinner's descendants. Now, most of us, myself included, would see this as barbaric and brutal, not to mention ridiculous, to make the descendants pay for the crimes of their forefathers. However, according to Jewish law, Haman's plans technically fell within the realm of justice, and we'll also see that the Jews themselves have no problem using Haman's own methods later in the story. So this isn't a matter of Haman committed a crime by trying to wipe someone out according to the Bible. It was simply a crime because he was doing it to the Jews. Now in verse 10, Xerxes gives Haman permission to do as he wishes. Now, throughout the rest of this chapter and chapter 4, the Jews hear of the news that they'll be destroyed. I don't know, I guess the king gives advance notice of genocide or something. Instead of running away, they rip their clothes up and wear sackcloth. Mordecai then tries to enter the city but isn't allowed in because they don't allow people wearing sackcloth to enter the city. Apparently they have like a no shirt, no shoes, no service rule. And at the end of chapter 4, Mordecai gets news to Esther about what is happening. She sends word back that she'll go to the king and speak with him, even though she knows it may get her killed. In chapter 5, Esther goes before the king, who spares her since her sight was pleasing to him, as previously discussed. The king offers her up to half his kingdom. Obviously, beautiful women are so rare in a king's harem that it's quite natural to offer half of your kingdom to one of them. And she replies in verse 4, "Let the king, together with Haman, come today to a banquet I have prepared for him." At the banquet, the king again asks what Esther would like, and she tells him in verse 8, "If the king regards me with favor, and if it pleases the king to grant my petition and fulfill my request, let the king and Haman come tomorrow to the banquet I will prepare for them. Then I will answer the king's question." She has not yet given her request. She's saving this for an appropriate moment. Now when we get to verse 9, Mordecai intentionally shows disrespect to Haman, even though supposedly all the Jews should at this point either be dead or in the process of being exterminated. Now why is Mordecai still being allowed to walk around freely? If my people were being destroyed, I'd surely not wish to start irritating the higher-ups. In verse 14, Haman's friends suggest having a 75-foot tall gallows built and asking the king to have Mordecai hanged. Yeah, this sounds like the type of suggestion people always make in normal conversation. A 75-foot gallows. Why doesn't Haman just stab Mordecai to death if all the Jews are being exterminated? If they're all being exterminated, clearly he could get away with such an act. But no, we have to make a 75-foot tall gallows. And none of this comes across as sounding like a fairy tale to people that read it. If you take the actual translation, it's actually closer to 83 feet. The New International Version says 75, maybe because it looks a little more reasonable to us than 83. The original text says 50 cubits, which is roughly 83 feet or 23 meters. In chapter 6, we get into more of a typical fairy tale development with the story. The king becomes bored and asks to have the story of his life read to him, where he's reminded that Mordecai once saved his life. He asks if Mordecai was ever rewarded and was told no. At this very moment Haman walks in, and the king asks him how to reward one who pleases the king. Haman, naturally thinking the reward was for himself, says in verses 8 and 9, "Have them bring a royal robe the king has worn, and a horse the king has ridden, one with the royal crest placed on its head. Then let the robe and horse be entrusted to one of the king's most noble princes. Let them ride the man the king, let them robe the man the king delights to honor, and lead him on the horse through the city streets, proclaiming before him, 'This is what is done for the man the king delights to honor.'" Of course, Haman is pretty angry when this is done for Mordecai. In verse 13, Haman's friends more or less tell him that he messed up big time.